Companion is a horror movie that will stick with you long after the credits roll because it offers some incredibly gory kills, a meaningful rumination on the role of AI in our lives today, and a feminist slasher for enthusiasts of the genre. It uses an unexpected twist in the story to turn the plot on its head and set up a moment of exhilarating triumph in the very final scene. A bloody affair from start to finish that doesn't shy away from getting dark and violent at times, Companion is a movie to avoid if you're nervous about AI. However, for those who enjoy watching a woman take control of dire circumstances and take back her agency from an entitled manchild of an antagonist, Companion is the ideal horror movie to watch. It offers the unique pleasure of watching a murderous rampage which culminates in a wholesome celebration of freedom. Ever since Companion's streaming release on Max, it has won over audiences again, something it successfully did during its theatrical run, earning a 93% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes. While the other factors undoubtedly contribute to its entertainment value, Companion is also the perfect, good-for-her movie. The good-for-her movie subgenre explained. It started as a meme. Lucille Bluth saying "good for her" in Arrested Development Season 3 Episode 1. Back in 2005, when the Season 3 premiere of Arrested Development aired, one scene particularly caught viewers' attention and gave birth to a popular internet meme. A newsreader reports that a woman, who, in her own words, couldn't take the pressure of parenthood anymore, had driven her car with her children in it into a lake. This horrifying news report, which is delivered in a tone that disapproves of this action on the woman's part, is met with a triumphant declaration from Lucille Bluth, who responds by saying, "Good for her." The internet was quick to turn the scene into a meme, and the phrase, "good for her," started being used to excuse and even celebrate behavior one would normally call inexcusable. While its usage for real-life situations is both questionable and most commonly ironic, the meme has defined an entire subgenre of cinema over the years. Despite being born only 2 decades ago, movies from the 70s and 80s are also considered part of this good-for-her subgenre today. A good-for-her movie isn't simply one where feminism triumphs, but one where a female character indulges in immoral and often criminal activities and comes out victorious at the end. Victory in this context can simply mean making a point before facing inevitable consequences or literally getting away with all levels of criminal activity. For this reason, many of the good-for-her movie protagonists are absolutely unhinged people we'd probably avoid in real life. However, the joy of watching a good-for-her movie comes from seeing someone live out the dark fantasies some of us inevitably have as a consequence of living in a cis heteropatriarchy. Enjoyment of such movies, which are often accompanied by declarations of "she did nothing wrong" or "she's just like me," isn't necessarily an endorsement of such behavior. It is instead an expression of the joy of seeing retributive, violent, and campy justice, usually in a form we wouldn't root for in real life, delivered against people who deserve some of it. Why Companion is the perfect, good-for-her, horror movie. Iris's revenge as AI is intriguing. Sophie Thatcher as Iris and Jack Quaid as Josh in Companion. Of all the film genres, horror is the one most commonly associated with the good-for-her subgenre of cinema. While there are contentions about whether the ending is really a triumph for her or whether she ends up trapped, there are many who feel that the protagonist of Midsommar gets the best good-for-her conclusion. Horror is a genre where reclaiming narratives of monstrosity and re-evaluating the meaning of a monster is quite common. This is why celebrating inexcusable behavior is often best done in a horror film. There are notable exceptions, of course, like Gone Girl, a crime movie where the villain wins in the end, which gave us Amy Dunn, one of the most iconic, good-for-her movie characters. However, horror will always be the most popular genre for good-for-her stories, because among other subclasses of horror films, the rape revenge film is almost always a case of good-for-her filmmaking. The revenge of the rape that the protagonist is subjected to early in the film becomes the focus and is often excessively violent, making such movies ideal examples of the subgenre. Moreover, AI automatically lends itself to a good-for-her narrative due to the fact that AI is almost always created to serve someone. This is why most movies about AI focus on the possibility of it gaining sentience and breaching this preordained contract of ownership. It is intuitive to see how such a story can be used to symbolically tell a story about a woman fighting for control over her life and her freedom from the hands of an abusive user, like in Ex Machina, where an AI frees herself from her narcissistic and selfish inventor. In Companion, we have Iris, Sophie Thatcher, an AI-operated humanoid who is given false memories to forever be in love with Josh, Jack Quaid. Josh intends to use her skills as a humanoid for his own selfish gain. After discovering that she has been created to spend eternity in servitude to Josh, who has abused his power over her to make her commit unspeakable acts of violence, Iris attempts to take back control of herself. The film then depicts how she triumphs over a system designed to keep her servile and avenges the misuse she has been subjected to. Why Companion is the perfect, good-for-her, horror movie. Its execution of the subgenre is impeccable. A cracked tablet screen with a picture of Josh and Iris. The typical, good-for-her, horror movie uses a premise where someone becomes monstrous over time due to her mistreatment at the hands of, and the incompetence of, others around her, who are most frequently men. So, for instance, in Jennifer's Body, a classic horror comedy movie, we see Jennifer Check being turned into a monstrous creature who preys on young men and boys in particular, after a boy band botches a ceremony where they were supposed to sacrifice her. Similarly, while the idea of being created to serve someone may feel objectionable, one can accept that AI has been invented in most cases for that purpose. However, it's the incompetent handling and the misuse of Iris' abilities that set her off on a journey of reclamation. If Josh had never tried to use her to commit murder and theft, she might have been able to go through life as she was meant to, as an AI companion to a man. However, he tampers with her settings and sets her up to be sexually abused, so she kills in revenge. Iris' journey in Companion thus starts with some form of a rape-revenge narrative, but with a twist: the man who touches her without consent, while deserving of being brought to justice for doing so, has been misled too. So, Josh has set up both the rape and the revenge, because he has hacked into Iris' system to remove her anti-violence clauses. Thus, this revenge is not a form of justice at all. This is how Companion develops the perfect, good-for-her movie. It makes agency the core motivation in Iris' story.